welcome to Picnic Point Kayak Fishing. I'm Mac. I'm here to do another DIY project in my garage where we haven't been for a minute. But today we're going to put together this simple kayak crate. Stick around and we'll get started. Okay, so we're going to get two crates. These two I've had for quite a while banging around the garage. Now they're going to become kayak storage crate. So two crates. I have a 24-inch section of 2-inch black PVC and a 24-inch section of 3-inch black PVC. This one's going to make rod holders that will mount on the side here. When I cut them down to 12 inches, they'll be perfect for that. I know a lot of people like to have, like the bass guys, like to have a lot of rod holders because they carry a lot of rods. I only typically carry 2, so 2 is going to be good for me. This one I'm going to use for storage for my little collapsible anchor that I have. I'm not in the habit of carrying it because I don't have anywhere good to put it, so I'm going to mount this here, something like this or maybe like that, so that I can put an anchor here, and then I'll be able to drop anchor and hold the position. And the next thing we're going to need is a bunch of zip cords, a bunch of zip ties, so that we can zip this all together. I had planned to use a piano hinge, but in thinking about it, I realized that in order to put a piano hinge on here, I would have to make like a filler that would fill in all these little holes and nooks and crannies. And that would be very time consuming. Plus, this isn't stainless steel, and if you're going to have anything in salt water, you want stainless steel, so this is going by the wayside. Next, we have 6 each stainless steel screws. These 1024 stainless steel countersunk screws for mounting the rod holders and the anchor tube to the crate. In order to put those, to make sure they stay tight, I've got 6 fender washers, all stainless steel, that will go on the inside to hold it all together, and then I have 6 nylock nuts that will not rust and not come loose over time. So that's basically it. Oh, and there's some bungee cord. I got a bunch of bungee cord for the purpose of tying the box shut. We'll make a little latch for it, and then we'll bungee across the top basket so that when you drop things in there, the bungee cord will hold that down. So the first thing we want to do is cut the bottom off of one of these crates. This one is the one I've chosen to cut the bottom off because it's a uniform straight line, whereas this one has these little holes in it, which would make the top of the crate weird. So this is going to be the bottom, plus it's red. If it actually goes in the water, you'll be able to see it better than if it's blue. So I'm going to cut the top of this crate off. Well, that worked a lot better than I thought it was going to work. I thought I was going to have to get out the Sawzall. Alright, so now we have our lid. What I want to do is make this pretty, considering it's all chewed up. So I'm going to sand this so it's smooth and clean looking. Now we file, I'm just going to file the fuzzy edge off. I started out with 80 grit sandpaper on my belt sander and then switched to 120 to get a nice clean top. And I may, just for fun, let me just torch the top to make it look as though it was made this way. It's a little trick I learned when I was making cabinets about using a little bit of heat to make plastic things look as though they were molded in whatever shape you made them. And the trick is to sand the plastic down to as smooth as you can and then hit it with a torch so that when it melts it turns back into the shiny smooth surface that it was before you chopped on it. At this point, that's how that looks. Let me see if I have my torch available. So we're just going to take a regular torch, plumbing torch, and just gently heat the plastic, and it just melts the plastic a little bit. And takes away all the fine cuts, the fine file marks and sandpaper marks that I did. And every plastic, whoops. And every different kind of plastic behaves a little bit differently to the heat, so you have to kind of watch what's happening, because you know plastic is flammable, so you don't want to start anything on fire. Definitely don't do that. Oh, that was the torch. That's what happens when you shake a torch while it's running. But you just keep going at it until you'll see the plastic start to melt, and the finer sandpaper and file marks will disappear. If you used coarse sandpaper, it'll be much more difficult to clear the markings. So you want to sand it down to as fine as you can, so that when you do this, you get a really nice quote-unquote factory finish. If the plastic starts to smoke, you might be getting it a little too hot. But there it is, and we'll let it cool down a little bit. We're going to put all the zip tie holes in it so that we know how and where it's going to hinge, and we know how and where we're going to mount all our storage hardware. And the beautiful thing about doing a crate like this is if in the future you want to add more rod holders, if you want to add, you know, other things to it, you totally can do that. And I imagine if you wanted to, you could cut more of these tops and stack them so you had like multiple storage lids. That might be getting a little out of hand, but it might be kind of cool too. Ooh, that's nice and warm. It's kind of a cold day in my neck of the woods today, so a little bit of heat is welcome. So there's our basic form, and I don't really think it matters which way it hinges, because it's got handles on all four sides, so we're just going to drill up hinges. And I want to put a lot of zip ties in this so that it's as stable as it can be, because it'll want to wiggle around like this if you don't have enough support on the lid. I'm going to put a restraining cord that goes from here to here, so that when you open it up it stops at probably just past 90. I want to put rows of bungee, maybe 5 bungees across the top. What I'm going to do is drill for the top restrictive bungee cords first. I'm just going to mark this near the top. So 2.6, 2.625. What is that in fractions? 2 5/8-ish. And my bungee cord is about 3/16 of an inch diameter, so we'll find a drill bit that's about the same. I'll probably go with 1/4 of an inch. Zip tie holes. I think we're going to start right at the corner right here. Make another one right below it. And there we have our zip tie holes. And I choose orange zip ties because, well, orange, you know, it's my thing. So those line up pretty good, and they should cause it to hinge just like that. We want to put in a pair of holes for the stop, for the restriction cord. Like that. So now we have all the holes drilled that we're going to need to assemble this thing. So then the next thing that's left to do is to make up our rod holders an anchor holder. 18 inches. So let's cut that, and then we'll cut these at 12 inches. So I got these tubes cut down to the lengths I want. I'm going to take a file and deburr the edges a little bit. They end up with quite a sharp edge on them, so you want to trim that off so you don't cut yourself. Okay, so those are cut and deburred, and if I bring my crate up here, set this here, these will be just shy of the top when they're installed, like that. And the anchor tube is going to go just like that, so that I have a place to keep my anchor that doesn't slide around. I think that'll work out really well. Let's go ahead and figure out how we're going to flare these tops out. A lot of guys on the internet will use a heat gun. I don't own a heat gun, so I'm going to try it with my torch. Just warm the plastic up and smoosh the top of these out with a wine bottle or something. Okay, so here goes this highly experimental affair. I'm going to try to heat these with the torch about this much, and then I'm going to use my Firehouse red wine bottle, and I'm going to put them together and try to flare the top of this so that it has a nice bell. Here we go. Let's see if we can pull this off. I may end up going back to the store for some more PVC. Do your best not to catch your plastic on fire. So maybe not quite so close to the fire. And I think this is going to need some sanding when it's all said and done. We'll flare that out. Here we go. Yeah, it's working. It's working. Oh, caught my pipe on fire. That's a bit of a flare, all right. It's not the prettiest one I've ever seen. It's the first one I've ever done, so you know. There we go. That's a flare, all right. And it looks like the wine bottle takes some of the heat off of it so that it kind of locks it in place once it's all done. So we'll let that cool down and start on the other one. I'm going to say this is a rather harrowing experience. Okay, we'll mash this one out. Oh yeah, see, second time around you're better at it than you were at the first time. And there we have a flared piece of PVC pipe. All right. I know the red wine people are probably going, you shouldn't heat your wine, but you know what? I'm not the wine drinker. Okay, so he's got plenty hot enough. Ow. Yeah, they're hot. Don't burn yourself. That's not the right choice to make. So there's that. There's that. This one's actually cooled off a bit. I'm going to try to cut the writing off. And I'll probably go down about 2 or 3 inches. So if I just make a mark here that's about roughly a straight line. And then I measure that 1.25 inches. And you know, you don't really necessarily have to do all the measuring, but if you do the measuring, your parts look more uniform. So I always like to measure so that everything looks like I planned it to be the way it is. Sometimes that doesn't work out in my favor, but usually a little planning goes a long way. And so I don't know if you can see that in the GoPro, but there's a line around that where it says Valencia, and I'm going to cut that with my jigsaw. All right, that worked out okay. Got a little notch in there like that. So our rods will drop in there. I'm gonna, of course, file and sand this a little bit because that isn't pretty at all. There we go. Take off all those sharp edges as much as possible. Those are done. This is done because I'm not going to flare those or do any of that because there's a rope that's going to go down in there, and so if I actually can't reach the top of it, I can just grab the rope and pull it up to where I can get a hold of it. Let me see if I can find that anchor and drop it in there. Here's the anchor, and here's the tube, and that will drop. Look at that, it drops right in there. That's like exactly right. So maybe I'll have to put a stop on the bottom, like some like a long screw or maybe a cap, and that'll stick out like that. So I'll just be able to pull that out and use my anchor. It'll be on board with me as I go fish. Put it together. So the way I'm going to install these on the crate is just to drill through them like this. So that I have a hole in the back, and then I'm going to take the front hole and I'm going to make that hole big enough that I can actually put the screw in through that hole all the way into the back. So that means that I'm going to need a big fat drill bit to make this front hole big enough that I can just drop a screw through it. The thing I'm going to do here is I'm going to open up this front hole, but not the back hole. So just find the hole carefully. Drill that front hole up real big and the back hole stays small. So now you have access through there to put the screw in. I'm going to do the same thing with this one. Big holes in the front, small holes in the back. Okay, got my hardware. I'm going to have to cut these screws down once I get everything fastened, because when I went to the hardware store, they had either too short or way too long, so I went with way too long. And I'll use my grinder to trim them off once they're installed. I have 6 of each: screws, fender washers, and nylon lock nuts. All stainless steel to resist the onslaught from salt water. There it is, the crate. I guess I'll start with the rod holders, and I want this to flip away from me. When I reach back, I want it to flip out away from me. So that means that the rods are going to go on the left-hand side, which is this side, like that. Let's go ahead and put these on. So drop these screws through. Perfect. So there's holes right where I need them to be, so I don't have to drill any more holes in this. Like that. couple of fender washers, a couple of nuts. Well, I've come up short. I forgot to put a spacer in there. So we need to have a spacer so that the lid can clear this, and I forgot all about that. So I'm going to fall back and regroup. So let me brainstorm some spacers and I'll get right back to you. So it's not ideal, but I found these pieces of cedar. Well, I found a long stick of cedar, and I'm going to use these as my spacer. I prefer the idea of a plastic spacer, but cedar is resistant to rotting because of the nature of cedar. So I'm going to use these probably temporarily until I can find some plastic pieces. I'll probably have to go to the hardware store and find some 3/4 acrylic or whatever, nylon, something like that, to replace these wood spacers. But for now, these wood spacers will do the trick. I've cut 6 of them. So now I have my fasteners in place. Put these through like that. And the cool thing is they actually give you a little bit of a wider landing space for the rod holder. And that's perfect. It's a little not perfect, the fact that I have to use a wooden spacer, but and there's our rod holders. They are not exactly the same height, as you might be able to tell, but they'll work. They'll do the trick. And now we'll mount this anchor storage tube on here. Well, those holes aren't exactly straight. So now I think my next order of business is going to be to put all the bungee cord pieces in there, and I was thinking that I would cut a whole bunch of bungee pieces, but now I'm thinking it would be wise to just sort of stitch it through the holes, make one big bungee net. And now I'll trim this off. Use a lighter to clean this up a bit. We've got just the right amount of bungee cord left over to make the the little stop piece that's going to go on here. I'm sorry about the situation with the cameras. Unfortunately, I wasn't paying attention to the framing of the GoPro, and I don't know what happened with the main camera. But I thought I'd take a minute to show you the completed project so you weren't left wondering at the end of the video. Here it is. I've actually put stuff in it. I've got my radio and my cooling towel up here. First off are the rod holders, which you've already seen. These haven't changed since I installed them, other than the fact that I added some water seal compound to the wood to make it extra water resistant until I get the plastic nylon pieces to replace those wood blocks. Also, on the anchor side, I straightened out the holes that were clearly crooked when I first assembled it. So now it sits straighter and it's a little more stable, and it's a little less embarrassing to show to people. Also, we have the zip ties that you didn't get to see. They're all functioning well. I may yet even add a few more. The little bungee stop cord is working well, doing its job nicely. And I also made, just out of a little bolt, I made a little hook for the bungee latch that goes on here. It's simply a short bolt with two nuts on it, one on either side of the crate, so that it holds the bolt out so that I can actually hook the bungee cord on there. It works well. Like I said, I put a bunch of stuff in it already. It is going to do exactly what I want it to do on the kayak. Thanks for watching. Keep fishing and stay safe.